Hello, loyal fans and listeners, and welcome back to the 96th episode of Reanimated, the zombie podcast that you love about all things undead. My name's Stuart Tiffin, one of your hosts, and I am joined by the elusive H.A. Conrad this morning. How are you today, H.A.?
Elusive as usual.
As we would expect.
I also wanted to give a shout out to our most loyal listener, Keith, out in the UK, because it's nice getting updates from him and to know that somebody's listening while walking their dog. It's a good thing to know. It makes me feel happy.
I feel like that's a pretty useful way to take advantage of that time. Dog walking can be somewhat mundane, so I'm glad that you're able to catch up on zombie happenings while that's going on. We are doing this as usual thanks to the good old pals down there at Squarespace. All-in-one platform makes it easy to create your own website. You've got your 24-hour customer support. You've got your drag and drop tools, merchandising, metrics, all the good stuff you need to make a website for your business or for your hobby or any number of things. So use our offer code ZOMBIE, not case sensitive, for your first purchase at checkout, and you'll get 10% off, and that's pretty bomb. So thanks, Squarespace, and thank you, HA.
Sweet. So, we have a couple of little articles, not too many this week, before we hop into our review of episodes 5 and 6 of The Walking Dead Season 4.
That's right.
There is apparently in British Columbia, there is a museum that is teaching zombie survival skills. So this is in British Columbia, or yes, it is in British Columbia. Vancouver. And they have developed a partnership with a group called Living the New Economy. And this workshop is a hands-on surviving the zombie apocalypse gathering, and it's focusing on survival skills, mainly just in case the dead inherit the earth. But it seems to be an ongoing thing, and it's a way, and we've seen this before, coupling this kind of a workshop to actually highlight or educate people about other things going on, specifically things related to the environment in this case.
That's the most Canadian element to this.
I know,
like
it's
the
such a Canadian
zombie workshop I've ever seen.
Which I really love, I have to
Like,
say.
as
The
long as it's
Canadians are great.
environmentally friendly, we'll use these techniques to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Not like the U.S. where we would focus mostly on like how to put more lead into the zombies. They're
or,
like,
or buy some of the zombie crazy weapons, right? So in this case, they kind of tour past different things, like different tools within the museum and artifacts, and talk about it, I guess. And then, so this has been going on, and it'll be going on through May 11th, which is the a shelter workshop.
I would so love to do these, man. These would be fantastic.
They look really cool, actually. So kudos to you, museum in British Columbia. You're the best. Victoria's Royal British Columbia Museum is where this is. So if you're up there, check it out.
Yeah. And then we've got a couple, a brace of articles from a website called the 405, which is a British website, but they wrote 2 articles about zombies this week, and so I'm going to talk about both of them. The first one, which I think is a pretty cool idea for a roundup listicle, is they do a Netflix guide. Because the catalog on Netflix changes so frequently, or at least every month or two, and so they did a zombie edition Netflix guide for the weekend, and they have an interesting list. And HA, it's like kind of sad how few of these we reviewed.
Well, we should review them. And we've been talking about Life After Beth, but I think that didn't end up making it really to you, or it didn't make it to a theater near you, because it was a pretty limited release, and then it was in and out of theaters really quickly.
Hey, well, guess what? Now it's on Netflix.
So we can do that. We can definitely do that, Stuart.
That's the beauty of realizing how few of these we've reviewed, is that actually not that few, but I think it's like 50%. So Reanimator from 1985, which it's kind of been on my
we have been talking
list.
about this, and we have decided to review other things.
Yeah.
I suspect that you're just scared to review this, but that's maybe just me.
Okay, well,
Projecting.
I'll have to prove you wrong and man up and watch the Reanimator. But yeah, so Reanimator, and that dude is super familiar in the photo that they're using here. I'm pretty sure he was in the Frighteners.
The guy that they're highlighting in that particular photo.
Yeah,
Yes, he was. Or if it isn't him, it looks an awful lot like him.
yeah, yeah. Okay, then yeah, Life After Beth,
You're talking about the
Zombieland.
dude from the Frighteners, the weird little torture dude, the one who's like taken over by cults. Is that who you're thinking?
I don't even. I thought it was the FBI guy who was like the bad guy.
Yeah, the little culty dude.
Okay, culty dude. Obviously, haven't
He's
seen the Frighteners recently enough.
no, I really. It's actually one of those movies I don't think
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
got enough acclaim. It actually is a pretty decent film. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
But yeah, so Zombieland is also on this list, which you and I have seen and quite enjoy. Night of the Comet, another one of these 80s films that I totally want to.
You've never seen this?
No, I've never even seen it, let
Oh
alone
my
looked at
goodness,
it.
it's so bad but so good. There are some really it's definitely a little time capsule of this particular genre at this time.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have
It's
to get on this. 'Cause-
and the hair is so bad for
oh yeah,
everybody here.
love it.
Yep. So we can certainly do that.
Yeah. So the problem is I'm just scared of the whole catalog ephemera thing, because what if these disappear by the time we're done with our Walking Dead review?
Well, then they'll go on to Amazon, which is typically what's been happening.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Amazon Prime. So we'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get there. All right. So then, World War Z 2013, and they have an honorable mention for Doghouse, which was apparently some sort of Shaun of the Dead ripoff.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So are you not giving that the nod?
Oh no, I see why they think it's a stretch. It's fine. It would be worth talking about with you.
Okay, well, cool. Either way, so that's their little list. It's a short little listicle, but I think that's a super helpful kind of article to write for a news website, and so I wanted to give them props for that.
All right, and on to this next topic, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and not they definitely make some points that are worthwhile. I guess so the headline of the article is, in order to come back to life, zombie movies need to die, and it touches on a lot of the mainstreamification of zombie films and the whole genre. And you and I talk about this just about every episode.
Mm-hmm.
when as soon as like somebody in Congress talks about zombies, we're like, well, okay, we've reached maximum zombie. Now what happens? How do
Right.
we continue from here? And so this article suggests that the genre needs to die, needs to like fade away in order for the real auteur material to make a
To
comeback.
come back.
He points to
Or at least for the material to, because that's the thing is that right now, and I mean, I think you see this with anything that becomes super mainstream and popular. There's just so much noise out there that it's hard to pluck the gems or the diamonds out of the rough, so to speak. So
which was, I feel like that's not such a leap from where it always was.
agreed.
Pre 2000, you always had the kind of the shitty cult ones, and then the real standout quality ones. It's just that they were coming out every 8 years instead of every year.
Right, or even every 6 months.
Right.
But the other piece of it is, and this is the interesting thing I find about about the zombie genre, is that some of it involves cheesiness and terribleness. You know what I mean? Like some of it is very campy, and that's always been sort of part of this whole strata. Is that good doesn't necessarily mean good quality. It can mean a lot of different things to different zombie fans depending on what you enjoy about them.
Hmm.
So I mean, I agree with this. I think it's an interesting idea for an article, but I also think that these kinds of trends come in and out of popularity. I don't know if you remember, we talked about this a very long time ago, I think, but the different horror genres tend to have a bit of, they'll go through swings in popularity. We know we've had, vampires and werewolves, and witches has definitely been there for the last few years as well, kind of like hanging out.
Hmm.
And it's just one of those things. Like, we cycle through them and then come back to them. I think what's really impressive, though, is how long this particular sort of stretch has just had legs. I mean, we still have multiple television shows on that are still super popular, and from the same, like The Walking Dead. Who knew that this would be so have such longevity? And not just one Walking Dead television show. Now they have like spin-offs and different things like that. I don't know. It's an interesting idea, and I don't know that it's going to go away anytime soon.
The example at the end of the article, I'm not sure I completely understand, which is that he uses Mad Max Fury Road to illustrate that a cult film can stay cult and still be successful by not going after mass appeal. And yet I feel like that film did so well. How did it not have mass appeal?
Well, and if you look at look at the actors that are in that film, look at the budget they had for that film, that is absolutely going after mass appeal. And the Mad Max franchise has an incredible cult following, and it's enough that it can bleed over into other things. I also think the other piece of Mad Max Fury Road, which got a little bit of notice, is that I felt like it was also very much tapping into like the video game visual for people. So I think it had mass appeal on a lot of different levels, and I would not term that a cult film at all at this point. And even when it came out, I don't think it could be considered that.
I think they stayed pretty true to their inner weird, though. With the guitar guy on the giant.
Oh man, I love that guy.
Yeah, like they definitely didn't let go of all of their picadillos in pursuit of that bigger audience. But yeah, like that film, it does have such a following that it's almost like it's not niche. It is cult, but it's like a cult of like a billion.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. So either way.
But it's also maybe it's just that there's more space for something like this because the audience is more accepting of those kind of weird peccadillos, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. Well, so an interesting article. I will have it in our show notes for people to take a look at and weigh in. Yeah, exactly. What else have we got out there?
The last thing was just, a little funny thing. It reminded me of the girl with all the gifts. But there is a fungus, apparently, a fungus among us, among frogs anyway, that basically it kills amphibians, but how it spreads amongst frogs anyway, is that it alters the reproductive behavior of the frogs and makes them apparently appear more sexy to other frogs. I don't know how that really works, but
I think it was actually their singing voices is what it changed.
Right, but I like to imagine frogs like pretending to be sexy. I don't know. Maybe
it's an insane theory that a fungus can be like, oh, you know what? Like, just try going up an octave, and oh no, that's flat. Let's round out that note. But yeah, so male frogs would sound more attractive when they're on the fungus.
Right. But this is kind of similar to toxoplasmosis, which is the one that we typically point to in terms of like parasitic type infections, but with mice. So mice who are infected with toxoplasmosis lose their fear of like big cat predators, and presumably so they go out and they kind of just hang out there and the cats eat them, and because the cats are the ones that are spreading them around,
right?
But presumably if, say, a tiger was infected with this, or if a human was infected with this, this was just like a funny article that came out a very long time ago. The human would go and be okay with the tiger eating them or something, or that's what they're positing. But it's interesting to hear that there's something else out there. I don't know. It's a fascinating thing, and also to me a very terrifying thing, but interesting to talk about.
Yeah,
nonetheless.
and honestly, this struck a nerve with me because I've been working my way kind of through watching X-Files on Netflix, trying to
Yeah.
get all the way through so I can watch the new episodes.
Oh, you haven't watched them yet?
No, I'm just trying to
Uh,
trying to figure out where the show left off, honestly, because I stopped watching, a long time ago.
yeah,
So I'm
spoilers
only in
available.
season 3, but I just watched Quagmire, which is the episode where they go to a lake in I forget, somewhere in the south, and Mulder's convinced that the shortage of frogs, or a frog die off around this lake, is linked to a lake monster, like a Loch Ness type monster.
Nice.
And so they don't really posit any other reasons that the frogs are dying off, but they do. They think either it's like environmental, or maybe this monster's been eating them all.
Hmm.
But anyway, it was they're talking about the frog die off in the 90s, which is when this was, I think, at its peak in terms of people were scared and not really understanding why these frogs were all disappearing.
Right. Just totally off topic, but are you enjoying? Are you finding the old X Files to be a lot slower than you remember? Because I'm finding with watching modern television shows that the pacing of X Files is sometimes tough for me to sit through.
The dialogue is often
Yes.
unrealistic.
Yes, it is.
They talk like like a journal, a scientific journal. Sometimes
Hmm.
they don't talk like people.
No, they
But
don't.
it's fine. Like I have a lot of sentimentality wrapped
Me
up in
too.
that show, so I'm happy to watch it.
All right, that's cool. All right, well, I think that wraps up our news cycle for today. Are you ready to jump into our reviews?
Hell yeah! So let's kick it off. This was an interesting couple of episodes to watch, actually, because it kind of spans. It's not the mid-season finale. The mid-season finale isn't for a couple more episodes, but it was. It almost felt like it.
It
Uh,
did. There was a lot going on.
yeah. And so the first one is called Internment, and it's kind of the final,
Pardon me.
because tonight it's kind of the final chapter of the whole plague story arc in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Except not really, because some people are still sick all the way through the end of the season,
Yep.
aka Glenn, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
So, Interment was directed by David Boyd and written by Channing Powell. Had an audience of 12.2 million, and this episode I found to be interesting because I was kind of bored for the first third of it, maybe first half.
And then it got really exciting.
Then it got really good at the end, and usually I feel like Walking Dead, they tend to front load
Right.
more action to kind of keep people hooked or something. So I felt like it was a backwards sort of a reversal, or I don't know. It was really kind of slow for the first half or two thirds, with Herschel just kind of wringing his hands about keeping up morale, and not a whole lot of other things going on. Honestly, like there was nothing. I mean, there was some stuff going on around the fence, but that didn't really kick off
No.
until the second half of the episode either. But yeah,
No, and it made me miss Herschel again. I miss that guy. He's great. But it also made talk about one of the bleakest places you could be sick. Not only are you sick, but you're sick in this like prison block. And then if you are one of the healthy people taking care of folks, it's like you not only do you have to worry about people just being totally sick and making sure that they're doing okay, but if they then expire, they become a threat to you.
yeah, no, it's
So
messed up.
it's sort of like a management of many different horrible things at the same time. So it was, but it was your. I think you're right. It was definitely a slow burn up until like maybe the last third,
Yeah,
even.
it's hard for me to even gauge because it felt longer too. Like it didn't
It
feel like a
did.
45-minute episode, and maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. But yeah, then though, it like when it kicks off, it's like, whoa, this is great.
Right.
And you get a payoff for a lot of that slowness because they're doing some character building. They're really it's a Herschel episode
It
in
totally
almost every
is.
way. Um, but then it kind of turns into a Rick and Carl episode too. They pack a lot into it in a way, even though there's like very little to
Right.
report. Uh,
Right. And
yeah,
I enjoyed also the just sort of the logistical issues that Herschel is trying to deal with in dealing with some like a breakout of the flu at this level. I mean, when you think about it, and this is something that happens every year, and it's a seasonal thing. And now it's even almost worse because you have people like flying all around. So like the flu virus has a chance to kind of spread worldwide now in a way that it didn't many years ago.
Yeah.
But when you hear about things, say about like the Spanish flu, which killed off so many people, you don't really think about it in those terms now. But what this I thought was very interesting is that there's very limited things that you can do to help people if there would be, like, especially in this world where there's limited resources, limited, and even medication has a very limited effect because it's just a virus and it has to like kind of work its way through. And the sort of, I don't want to say hopelessness, but the dire straits that Herschel is in here trying to treat all these people. And even his colleague, the doctor, falls ill to it. So it's sort of like this horrific situation that just keeps getting worse and worse as the episode progresses. And you become more, I think you become more aware of just how powerless it must feel to be in this situation and to watch it kind of all crashing down around you.
Yeah. I remember last time we talked about who was still healthy in the prison,
Mm-hmm.
and they really seem to make it look like it's Herschel who doesn't seem to have the flu somehow. He's another one of the immunes. There's Rick and Carl, and I guess Judith and Beth who don't appear in this episode. Yeah. They're just in quarantine, and Beth, and those are the only people who don't seem to have it because Maggie is doing all the perimeter defense by herself,
right,
until Rick gets back from abandoning Carol out in the woods.
Yep.
And Herschel's stuck in the cell block. The only guy really, I mean, he's got Sasha and Glenn helping, but they do a good job of making them seem totally like kind of
useless. Yes,
not useless. They're helping, but they're barely keeping up.
Yep.
So it's super bleak, and I don't know if it's completely believable that with their 50 or so, I don't remember how many people they've got. I don't think they actually ever say, but with their whole population getting sick, I mean, maybe it is because it's just that virulent, but it's a little convenient too that it's just a couple of our hero characters who make it.
Well, I have a theory about why Herschel is immune, and this is also something that happened a few years ago. There was a flu strain that was pretty terrible, and lots of people were getting it except for people over 60, because there was a similar flu strain that happened in like the 60s or 70s. So all those people were immune or had more immunity than younger people. So that could be perhaps why Herschel is not having as hard of a time as other people. But I also think with people like Daryl running around licking themselves all the time, it's a little unlikely that you're correct, that our main characters would remain unscathed, all of them, except for Glenn, of course.
Yeah, we almost get a couple more characters. We do get some other characters getting screen time and even lines.
Yeah,
in this
amazing.
episode, but then they die. They die like immediately,
pretty quickly. Yeah.
You
can almost trace like when they have their lunch. You're like, oh, they're gonna bite it.
Yeah, you see this character in the first act of the episode. They're going to be dead by the third. It's just you can't have Herschel by himself in an action scene. I feel like there is no suspension of disbelief that he could fight off all of the zombies in the cell block. So they had to introduce some other characters who actually don't kill any zombies. They just
hang out,
breaks one's back, and then the other two. Yeah. So the guy shoots the lady who's helping when his son turns, and like 3 zombies turn all at the same time. But to the second, it's kind of insane.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I remember watching this the first time, and thinking that I was really hoping at some point Herschel would end up with with a leg gun that they could put onto it, a la Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen.
That's just as well. I think that's a good thing. He does a lot of running in this episode. Did you see? I don't know that I really bought that he was still on a peg leg for like less than a year when he's just running all over the cell block. Not like fast, but
he is running quite a bit for a man that is having, has a bit of a But you know what? I think adrenaline will cause you to do a lot of things. So
That's a good point. I should forgive the running. Um, but yeah, he goes through his character goes from like reading the Bible, praying over the dead, to putting down the Bible, picking up the shotgun, and then back to the Bible by the end of the episode. So it's a nice little arc for him.
yep, and it's a good Herschel episode. And I mean, I think one of the whole thing with the respirator
Gross.
was so disgusting. So, for those of you who haven't seen this is one of the virus victims is having a hard time breathing, so they have a respirator for him, but he expires, and they need it for Glenn. So there's this really weird respirator chase where Herschel's trying to get the respirator, and they're in these weird nets, trying to get it out. And then, it's a good thing Glenn can't see what they're doing, because I would have a real problem with them using that respirator on me.
Yeah.
They don't even clean it out. They're just kind of like, all right, this is going down.
Yeah, pretty gross.
It's totally disgusting. But anyway.
That hurts too, or at least it feels.
It looks like it hurts. It looks like it hurts a lot. But yeah.
I was actually intubated last week because I had surgery and I was put under full anesthetic or anesthesia or whatever. And I woke up and I had like a sore throat for the rest of the day. But I guess that's all it was to it. It wasn't much more than that, but it still kind of sucked.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So by the end of this episode, Rick has recruited Carl out of containment, out of isolation, to help him with the fence because Maggie has busted into the quarantine wing to help her dad, which I liked, although I didn't like the fact that she broke an axe with her bare hands because she's just like so strong. But yeah, so there's a lot of Carl yelling going on in this episode. And they go out and their fence shoring up concept is terrible and fails.
Yeah, it fails pretty quickly.
Really badly. And then there is a terrible scene of them shooting 40 zombies on automatic. Oh God, I don't know. I'm never going to get over it.
I knew this was going to drive you nuts. Please talk about this.
I'm never going to get over it. You can see, even the producers are like, okay, make sure you show a couple of bullets hitting the zombies in the chest before the headshot. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly why. Do they have 2 bullets to waste for every one that they get in the head? I doubt it. But Rick even gives Carl the instructions. He's like, all right, keep it on full auto or whatever.
I know.
Or like, just squeeze the trigger for rapid fire. I'm like, no, just tap it one time, and put that bullet right in its head, and then go on to the next one. Anyway, so they kill like 50, I don't know, a whole herd of zombies. And in its own way, that's cool because they're just, they're the only 2 people out there.
Well, and also up until this point, Carl's been trying to, not, they've all been concerned about the level of Carl's path to being a sociopath. And this is definitely some father-son bonding that wasn't taking place. Like, think about the Carl-Rick relationship even season 1. This is is definitely a transition.
Definitely. This is a huge turning point because it's like he takes the blinders off Carl, and then Carl basically becomes the dad in this scenario. Like, by the end of the scene, he's telling Rick, oh, everything's going to be fine. He's like throwing him the extra magazine. Rick, they keep showing Rick like looking at him like, who? What's happening?
I know. It's really weird.
Daddy? So it's,
Aren't you supposed to be in the house, Carl?
Yeah. Carl's never in the house.
Never in the house.
So I did like that part of the scene, despite the terrible shooting stuff. And then by the end of the episode, it's like daylight, everything's better. Their crops seem really high. It's almost like there's been a time jump, but we know that Glenn's still sick.
So there hasn't been. It's just, but I agree with you. It does feel that way, but there isn't. And then, dun dun dun.
Fantastic reveal of the governor just kind of watching over the wire, watching Rick and Carl do their crop stuff.
With his leg up.
Yeah. So, and then some spooky music. And you're like, holy crap, so that's a pretty good damn cliffhanger to leave that episode on.
And what I kind of like about it is that then as we jump into the next episode, they don't even give you a resolution to that cliffhanger, they take you back in time.
And this is a thing that this show does every so often that is actually super frustrating.
It can be.
They give
In
you a
this case, it was
cliffhanger,
not to me.
I guess, because actually, yeah, you're right. Live Bait, which is the next episode, is a fantastic episode.
It's so good. It really is.
Yeah, it's fantastic because it plays off of any of that empathy that you ever had for the governor, and makes it's actually cruel in that respect. It makes you like him. It makes you think he's valuable.
It toys with you.
It definitely does. And it shows off his drunken kung fu style of fighting zombies, which is like that's one of the best parts of this whole episode, where he just kind of stumbles off of the curb and avoids a zombie eating him. But yeah, fantastic episode. This one was written by Michael Uppendahl, written by Nicole Beatty, and had 12 million viewers. So slight decrease week over week, but I don't know. It's still, I'm pretty sure it's still giant numbers for any TV show.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I like this because there is, especially during the season, I at least, you see Michonne going out trying to find the governor. Nobody can find the governor, much like Carl. He's never in the house. And you are wondering what's happened to him, what he's been doing, and this gives a nice little backstory as you lead into like the rest of the season about what's happening with the governor.
Yeah.
And the sort of the aftermath of Woodbury.
Right, because it picks up like right after the massacre, essentially.
Right. And things are not well with the few survivors that he has with him. It's not like he is not doing so hot, our governor. So it's really, he's just totally wrecked by what happened with Woodbury. He really is not leadership material at this point. And even his own team is really not psyched to be around him because he's a risk and he's a weakness for them.
Yeah. So Martinez and the other dude's name, who I never can remember,
I can never remember that dude's name either.
It's like Brumphy or something, or
yeah,
I don't know, he doesn't talk. They disappear and leave him, and
they leave him while he's sleeping,
truck.
Of all things, too. It's sort of like they don't even leave him protected. Like, it's not even like, hey, bro, we're moving on. They're just going to leave him there.
Maybe they were idling in the truck for 10 minutes waiting for him to wake up, and he just didn't. So, like, you don't know. But then, yeah, so his first act of being on his own is pretty funny. Mm-hmm. He just takes his giant truck, drives it through Woodbury, and then burns it all down and watches the zombies walk through.
Yeah, he's so angry, and there's like this really great shot, and they even have it in like, there's like a Wikipedia summary, and he's just standing in front of a burning house. It's great.
It was pretty fantastic. But then they rapidly, this episode, okay, if I have one overall critique of this episode, is it also has not just perceived time jumps, but actual time jumps.
Right.
That tend to make it feel disjointed.
Yeah, that's true.
There's two in particular later on in the episode that I'm like, what? No? How? Mm-hmm. So here we have, I think there's one time jump where he's in Woodbury, and then we jump to him being all scruffy and walking like he's totally hammered and looking kind of looking like a zombie, the thing that they have some people do in this show. Mm-hmm. And then he finds the 4 nicest people in the zombie apocalypse because he's the governor, and that's just how his
luck works.
Like, what if he'd run into the Claimers or Terminus people, but nope, he's going to run into some people who are complete shut-ins and delightful,
and still have their moral their moral compass is intact.
Yeah, it's kind of. It's pretty unfair because what percentage of the survivors are like these people is probably 0.01. But the best part about this whole episode is delightful Tara.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Sweet Tara with her fist bumps and her bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Lying about her police academy prowess or whatever.
Lying about everything, just like being a tough, weakling.
Yep.
But it is also sad to realize that this is Tara's whole family, or not to realize, but to remember. And she's still on the show. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't understand the scene with the SpaghettiOs. I feel like
yes, there's some weird scenes here.
Chris Hardwick even asked this question to one of the producers or somebody on Talking Dead after this episode. I remember watching it, and he was like, "Why did he pour out the SpaghettiOs that they gave him?" And nobody had any answer. I'm like, "Okay, so if nobody knows,
Then why did it
even
happen and why did they leave it in? It was
I,
super bizarre.
yeah, why do you even need that scene other than to have SpaghettiOs on the windowsill when he's burning his family photo later on in the episode? But what's that do for you? I don't get it. Yeah, it was just a super weird thing.
I don't
Uh,
get it either. And then it also made me remember how SpaghettiOs taste, and I don't know that I needed to remember that.
no, SpaghettiOs are not great.
They are
Uh,
not, especially the ones with the meatballs. Ugh. Anyway.
but so Philip, aka the governor, aka Brian Harriet, endears himself to this family by just doing anything they ask him to, which is kind of awesome, and it makes you like you're definitely like, oh, he's turned over a new leaf. He's now useful. He's now a good guy.
Well,
Um,
it's interesting because I mean, this is the thing with the governor. You always see these weird little like glimpses of his humanity, and they are almost always related to something to do with his former family. I mean, I think it's very clear that the daughter here,
is a penny surrogate.
yeah, totally, Megan. He wants to, and it brings out his paternal protective mode, and there is also a piece of him, Woodbury was a complete failure, but a lot of what went on in Woodbury was him wanting to be this protector, and yes, things were not as they seemed there, but ultimately that's where I mean, those impulses were totally twisted. It's in many points, and if you were not on his team, you were going to get horrible things would happen to you, a la Glenn and Maggie, and
The army dudes, yeah.
yep. But this is I wasn't surprised to see these things come out with this family because he likes being the protector. And in a
Yeah.
way, and it's definitely the Penny thing that's doing it here. Because he wants to draw Megan out, and he's super psyched when she finally starts acting okay around him because she was shell shocked in this episode. She wasn't talking really
Yeah.
at the beginning, so he
Then
kind of
suddenly
draws
she
her out.
Yeah, but then suddenly she is talking and nobody acts like that's weird.
I know that was weird.
This is the thing with some of the disjointed element of this episode is there's a couple comments made about maybe she'll say something again, and then like a scene later she's talking, and I'm like, wait, are we not going to acknowledge the fact that is nobody going to say, oh my god, she's talking? No,
Yeah, that was weird.
and then as soon as that scene happens where he pretends to be, he says he's a pirate and he like bonds with her, then there's like a long cut and he shows up totally shaved and haircutted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was in a way, yeah, one of those scenes where I was like, okay, wait, what?
What just happened, right?
We're just going to assume, okay, so they're kind of like compressing what I assume they wanted to be an hour-long episode into 45, or who knows.
Yeah, and the other thing that definitely okay, so we've got this weird little corner of the world that's been untouched by a lot of the horrific things that have been happening. They're able to kind of exist even though there's danger outside, but in this little apartment complex, they're okay. But the father or the father in this group is dying of stage 4 lung cancer. And to me, like all these little time jumps, you would have thought that there would have been some conversation about what happens when this guy dies because
Yeah.
they're in such close quarters. And David is the name of the dad. And so what happens in this scene with the governor and this family really just drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
And also it's one of those things where, oh wait, this person is taking extraordinarily long to turn when in other places it's taken like 2 seconds, so
at the prison for sure, like
yeah.
you know. However, this is good for it's good dramatic material for him to, you see his face. Like a lot of this is I forget this dude's name, Morrissey. He's a great actor. Like
He's a fantastic actor.
some of the scenes in this episode are just like a shot of his face, and he's having an emotional reaction on his face, even in the state like just like barely breaks through his catatonic sort of outer shell, and you're like, oh man, yeah, I know exactly what you just got across with that look, like when at the end when he gets Megan to run into his arms.
Yeah, he's super
He has
happy.
one tiny little glimmer of I don't know, face acting, and
Yeah, he
then he's
does.
off running. So he in that scene where they reveal that they're like, I think he's been gone for a while, and you see Morrissey's face kind of twitch, and you're like, okay, so now he knows it's about to step off. Like,
Yep.
so that was a even though, yeah, you're right. There should have been some frank conversations happening when he realized how clueless these people were. But then
True,
again,
true.
he's the governor. Like, we don't know his really all of his motivations. We don't know why he's
What he
acting the
does.
way he is, or if he's even like remotely sane at this point.
True. Yeah, you're correct.
Also, the old people's home was a pretty scary scene
It
where
was
we
horrible.
you kind of it's kind of one of the first times you ever see the governor lose composure that isn't rage. He's looking terrified.
Yeah, and as one should.
And
But
as yeah, definitely, because this place was full of zombies. But he's in there by himself, just him and his shitty old revolver. But I thought that was another really cool scene. And another really cool little vignette is when he goes to get the backgammon set, and
yep,
he finds the guy who has tried to kill himself in the bathtub. Like,
yep.
there's all these empty beer cans on the floor of the bathroom. Like, just in a scene with no words, with no dialogue, just a couple of, you see a photo, and you see, like, the scene in the bathroom. It's one of these times that The Walking Dead tells this little story about how shit went down. It's kind of like that whole scene with Shane and Andrea. I think it's in season 2 when they go out to a subdivision and kind of go through a house that's been overrun with zombies, but you can kind of see the progression of that. And
Or
this in this little
Even when Michonne and Daryl went out to that gas station.
yeah, again, yeah, exactly. It's just I love it when The Walking Dead shows these things. It's like a diorama or
Yep,
something. I don't know. I think it's one of the best things that this show does, but you just have to be paying a little bit of attention to see it.
agreed. And then the rest of the episode after the governor has to basically do the horrible business of bashing David's head in with an oxygen tank. He's going to take off from this family, and part of it's because they're kind of traumatized by the fact that he did this, even though it sounds like they understand. But the big deal with Megan is that she's all she sees is this dude who bashed her granddad's head in.
Yeah.
So, but I still think it was good, and I think the progression to them on the road, and then Megan running into the governor's arms, and then it just wraps it up into a nice little package because they end up, really they end up with a reunion of sorts.
Yeah.
With he and Megan drop into this hole where he takes out all the zombies there with his bare hands. Nice.
Yeah, it's just nuts.
And then, you of course are wondering who the hell built this hole or dug this hole. And then you see Martinez's face kind of looking over the edge, and his face is really, he does some good face acting there too.
Yeah.
Like he can't believe it's the governor down there.
It's a fun little reunion. Of course, we don't really know what the governor's thinking about it, because he's telling Megan that he'll never let anything happen to her. I swear. What do you say? Cross my heart, cross my heart. Other things that also happen before the end of this episode is him and Lily, Megan's mom, hook up.
Oh yeah.
Which is a terrible, terrible decision on Lily's part. Yeah. And there's another time jump when they jump into the truck and start driving. And when he's in the truck and there's a bit of dialogue with him talking about where they're going to go. And he's like, we'll let the roads tell us where to go. And he sounds the most like the governor
Yep.
of this whole episode.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, great. So he's just back. Except that he's saying nice things. But when he starts to talk in that timbre,
when he talks in that timbre, and also like when he hooks up with Lily, I'm like, don't do it, Lily, just don't. Guess it's not gonna be a good ending there. But
quick casting aside, Lily looks way too much to me like Lauren Cohan.
She does.
It doesn't work for this show. You've got to find someone who looks a little different.
I thought that was almost a decision that they made on purpose.
Because he once had Maggie as a prisoner in his town.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But agreed, they
Maybe.
do look a little too much alike.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, him ending this episode with killing the zombies with his bare hands, doing a Roadhouse style throat rip on a zombie, which totally doesn't kill it, but at least knocks it over for half a second.
Hmm.
Seemed like a weird attack move to use. Um, and then he picks up Megan and he tells her, "I'm never going to let anything happen to you." Very important to remember the scene when the end of the season comes. But yeah, I think I know that we're in for a cool ride with the rest of his resurgence. Um, so those episodes are? I forget what they're called. The next two are Dead Weight and Too Far Gone,
Yep.
and that is going to be a. Oh no, that's still not the.
It's
That's going to
not.
get us to the mid-season finale.
Like this whole little grouping of episodes all felt like they could be that, or at least a little bit of that. And there's a lot that goes on in them. So I can't wait to talk about the next two with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so join us again next time, ladies and gents, when we return to season 4 of The Walking Dead, back to the prison and the governor's side quest storyline um, with here at Reanimated. And get in touch with us. Let us know what you think of the show and what you think of these episodes of The Walking Dead. I'm totally on board with thinking that this is probably the best season of the show.
Agreed. I
I
think it's
think
my favorite. Even as I'm
yeah,
rewatching it, I'm really enjoying rewatching it. It doesn't feel like
as
a
I'm
chore at
yeah,
all.
and as we're watching this season and season 6, which I'm really not in love with right
Me
now.
neither.
And we have an impending Fear the Walking Dead second season premiere coming up.
Beach zombies.
Yeah,
Did you watch the new trailer?
I've just been seeing some snippets here and there on the internet.
I'm,
Does seem like a lot of beach and not a lot of boat. So I'm wondering if the boat's even going to make it through the pilot.
I saw a couple of boats and a couple of wetsuit zombies, so maybe I don't know. Let's see what happens. But
Yeah, either way, like yeah, a lot of potential still out there. We'll, even though we ended on kind of a downer note, although no, we ended on a good note because the finale was pretty solid, but just so much of it, the rest of that 6 season episode was or season was not 6 episode season rather was not super strong.
right.
Either way, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, reanimatedpcast on Twitter, reanimatedpodcast.com is our website. And I think that's everything.
It is. So until next time, ciao.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening.